Welcome back to the Two Promises podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team send their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for their masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth, smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
So, if you don't mind, maybe going into a little bit more of that story on how, you did get led down this little trail, even though you knew, hey, this is bad. Well, maybe you didn't know, but you were seeing red flags, things are going, but you still felt yourself kind of trapped in this relationship. Would you mind sharing kind of on that?
Absolutely. So again, I held on to those words that he said, those sweet nothings. I held on to the fact that I know I was attracted to him and he was charming and we did have nice times together. And he told me all the time how much he put effort into me. I saw other women look at him. I saw other women want him. And I felt so happy that I was the one on his arm. And it's all very trivial now in hindsight. At the end of the day, he was just an attractive, charismatic sociopath. And I held on to it because I wanted to believe that he loved me. So leading into the second kidnapping, it was much more brutal than the first kidnapping. We were at his apartment and an argument erupted and he started the arguments. He started them. And a lot of the times that theme was, oh, he feared I was cheating on him. He feared that. So I was done. I knew that he got violent because he had already pushed me during the first kidnapping. So in my mind, when he started to yell at me with this fear that I was cheating on him, I just decided I'm going to get up and leave. I'm going to leave. And I get up to go to the top of the stairs because you have to go to the top of the stairs to go down out. That's how his apartment was set up. I tried to escape his anger. So I leave out to escape his apartment and he runs out in front of me and he blocks my way and I see that he has a weapon. And this has completely changed the dynamics. He's never used a weapon with me before. So he holds a weapon up to me. He holds the blade to my face.
Like a big sword, right?
It was an actual sword, an actual heavy sword. And he held it up to my face and I will never forget it. He said, if you try to move past me, things will get ugly. And I remember it was in disbelief. I had a weapon in my face. I tried to escape an escalating situation and I had a weapon in my face. And I knew that I could not leave now. He had blocked my way and there's a blade in my face. So he basically essentially orders us back into his bedroom. And there's this fear that just overtakes me, knowing I can't leave now. He has changed the dynamics completely. And so he then proceeds to yell at me, scream at me for 2 long hours where I am not free to leave. And like one point he puts his hand over my mouth and he's yelling at me because I'm crying. I had to talk my way essentially out of that situation. I had to convince this deranged man with a weapon that I was not cheating on him for him to eventually let me go after 2 hours. And that was the second time he had kidnapped me. And at the time, I did not think of these as kidnappings, as bizarre as that sounds, because I was so wrapped up into this. I just knew it was horrific. So finally, he lets me go. And I am driven by a friend to the police station because I knew it was not okay. I knew it was not okay, even though I didn't necessarily think of it as the word quote unquote kidnapping. I knew it was not okay to be held hostage and threatened with a weapon. So I go to the police department and they have the nerve to say to me after I said, hey, I've been held hostage by my boyfriend and I've been threatened with a weapon. And when I tried to escape, he said, if you try to move past me, things will get ugly. And they had the nerve to say to me, well, I'm sorry, we can't do anything. That's pretty much a domestic dispute. He did not outright say he was going to kill or harm you. So we technically cannot even arrest him. They didn't even question him. And now looking back, I think that is absolutely so appalling. If somebody says, especially, a young woman says, hey, I've been held hostage for 2 hours. I was not allowed to leave the apartment. He threatened me with a weapon when I tried to escape. Absolutely, he should have been arrested right then and there.
Right.
This strange world that we live in where it's like, oh, it has to be so specific in order for you to do anything to help, but it can be so broad that you can not do anything to help, that you cannot intervene and not do what we believe the system is supposed to do, that we're raised, that we're told, this is what the system does. We're protecting innocent people. We're doing these things for the benefit of the innocent and the underprivileged and whatever it is. Like, you have rights, but in reality, it's like one little thing gets the most heinous criminal off of the hook.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes me think a little bit about your story as well, and anything that they can look to just unburden themselves with the duty to act, the actual things that they should do. This is something that I kind of see reoccurring in my life a lot, is whenever I'm trying to advocate for the right thing, for justice, for improvement, for changes, and you're talking to all of these people and they'll use any little thing to discount you. Maybe it's because my responses are not really that extreme or overboard,
Yeah.
but to some people, they might see it that way. And then that gives them that little click. Okay, cool. Now I don't even have to do anything with this guy because he's unreasonable.
Ugh, it's unfair.
So, right. And so you've seen kind of some of this stuff play out in a different way with different words. And oftentimes, like you said, from growing up, your mother would drug you.
Yes.
And in the book, you were also forced by Jake to also take drugs, and you limited it. You did your best to not overconsume or whatever, but you knew that in the scenario you were in, you needed to do that to move it forward and to get through. So, do you mind kind of sharing a little bit about that with the audience, with the listeners?
Absolutely. So during the third kidnapping, because he convinced me that, he loved me, he would change, all these things. So I stayed after the second kidnapping. So the third kidnapping was by far the most horrific, traumatizing kidnapping. Started off as a day where we were supposed to go out. He wanted to go to the store. He wanted me to get ready. So I get ready. I get dolled up the way that he likes.
Just to go
And
to the
an
store.
argument.
Just to go to the store.
Yeah, just to go to the store. Just to go to the store. And after I had spent all this time getting ready, he said, I want you to wait in the car, like he was ashamed to be seen with me. Even though I had already met his father and everyone knew we were together, he acted like he was ashamed to be seen with me. And I got upset about that. And he said, you know what? Change of plans. So he drives us out. And I thought the night would be okay. I thought there's some tension in the air, but it's going to be fine. And it turned out not being fine. It ended up with him driving on these back roads in the back of Tuolumne County, where it's this country hillbilly town with all these back spooky roads. And he drives out, and I realized we're not going back to town. We're not going back to where my apartment was, which was the plan. I said to him, I'm like, babe, where are we going? And he says to me, we're going back to town. And I knew that wasn't the case. So I had asked him again, like, babe, where are we going? And he told me to shut the F up. And then I realized something was wrong. Like, the whole energy shifted, his whole demeanor shifted. And he drives to these back roads and he tried to force me to take some meth. I didn't want to, because meth, even though he smoked it and was pretty high functioning, I would take 1 or 2 puffs at most, because anything beyond 2 puffs and I was horrifically ill. I have severe ADHD, so taking meth really calmed my mind, like I had taken an Adderall. It was not something that I wanted to do, but I had done it occasionally in the past to please him. But this time he wanted me to smoke it, and I was just like, no. I had a bad feeling about things. I'm like, no. And he overpowers me and he shoves it in my mouth and he causes me to, like, rip my lip. It was like a puddle of blood had poured, like, filled my mouth because he had shoved it so far. I didn't want him to break my teeth. So I smoke, and he forces me to smoke some more puffs. And thank God I have ADHD, because it did not cause me to go into psychosis or anything like that. In fact, smoking that much meth caused my mind to be very clear headed. It slowed my mind down. So I was able to understand the situation, as horrific as it was, in almost a calmer setting, though I was still terrified to my core because I knew something was wrong. Something was going to happen. It was going to be bad. And it certainly did, because he proceeds to force me out of the car, and I'm crying. I'm trying to get home. I'm scared. I know something's wrong. And he forces me to pose for photos. He starts making me pose for his camera. And he's forcing himself to be in these pictures. Some of the pictures are just of me. He's telling me to wipe my effing tears off my face and pose for these photos. And he's forcing me to smoke more meth. And then he would get me back in the car, drive down another back road, pull me out of the car, force me to pose for more photos. I'm terrified. I'm crying. Take me home, babe. What's going on? He's telling me to shut the F up. And at one point during this horrific encounter, which lasted for 12 long hours, mind you, I was kidnapped for 12 long hours. He talks about selling me, saying that he can sell me for a few $1,000s easily.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask about, is he was making these comments and he was being very direct about, you could disappear.
Yeah.
I could sell you. I could, yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead.
absolutely. He said, you could disappear. And then I talk about it more in the book, but we have reason to believe all these years later that he actually is a serial predator. And I think that most likely he is a serial killer. And I know that sounds like a lot. However, evaluating a lot of things from the case, now with the information that I do have, I absolutely believe that. Now, I can't say for sure that he is a serial killer, but I can say most likely, because he was in his mid-30s. You don't just randomly kidnap somebody 3 times. This was all calculated.
And you found women's clothing articles in the trunk of the car. There's been a lot of disappearances.
Correct.
And at the time, it didn't necessarily register. From what I remember in the book, it didn't register. You did ask about it because you're like, oh, are you cheating on me? But like later in that hindsight 2020 piece, you're like, wow, are these actual clothes of previous
Well,
victims?
absolutely. And it wasn't just the clothes. It was the fact that they were of different sizes and different shapes. And it wasn't just that. It was the fact that he was taking photos because they were trophies. I realized he was forcing me to pose for photos during my kidnapping because he wanted trophies. And it was also the fact that I found out that a woman's body, her remains had been found. And this part I don't think is in the book, but her remains had been found about 20 to 30 minutes from where I was kidnapped. You can look her up online, Parrots Ferry Jane Doe. And she had been chained up and tied up. And multiple women, multiple people have gone missing. And she was taken like just from where I was essentially. All of these pieces are thrown together. In fact, I'll say this. I put all of the evidence, all of these details into ChatGPT, and I said 1 through 10, how likely is this person a serial killer? And ChatGPT said 9 or 10. And ChatGPT actually broke it down, the fact that he was in his mid-30s. This was not just a new behavior of a teenage boy acting out. This was a man who had been established. There was the calculation of the drugging, of the taking the photos, of the trophies of these used women's underwear and bras and panties, everything. It was all of this, especially given the fact of the people going missing. I absolutely believe without a shadow of a doubt that the man who kidnapped me has kidnapped other women. And that is one of the reasons why I wrote this book.
And we are so thankful that you did write this book, because there are things that need to change.
Absolutely.
There are broken aspects of society that we are in the process of dismantling, rebuilding, and trying to improve so that this is not the norm, so that
Absolutely.
criminals can get away with their behavior and continue to perpetuate violence and continue to be terrors to the community. So throughout this, you're trying to maintain your identity. You're trying to maintain your autonomy. You're also forced, coerced, extorted, all of these things into certain behaviors as a survival mechanism, just to make sure that you get out of this situation where you are in danger. You are very real in danger at someone who has a history of violence against women, of killing, kidnapping, raping, maiming, harming. And then on the other side of the occasion, or the other side of the coin, I don't remember which kidnapping this was, but I do remember one part of your story that I think is worth highlighting is we're all fighting this battle. We're all going through these different things. No one really knows what they are. They are traumatic, and we're all trying to survive. We're all trying to put on our face in the world and trying to get through it. and trying to behave in the way that a normal, rational person would want to behave. And so here you are, you've just been kidnapped, might have been this scenario or a different one, and you're putting yourself together. You know what you need. You need a little bit of time. You get into work,
Yeah,
and
this was this
your
kidnapping, the
manager,
last kidnapping, yep.
it was this one.
I
Okay.
tried to go to work after being kidnapped and held hostage. I tried to go to work. Is that not insane? Does that not show my work ethic as a person?
Yeah. And so you're just like, all right, let's just get into work. I'm going to make my
Yep.
shift. I'm going to get there. And then your manager or employer is just like cold, like icy steel cold. You didn't show up in the right colors.
Correct. It was ridiculous. I worked at this fashion boutique, and even though we were still in August, apparently they had transitioned to the fall outfits. So I show up in a dress that I had worn and gotten several compliments on before. My that particular boss actually had complimented this exact outfit before. So I come into work. She's like, "What are you wearing? This is not the right fashion colors. You need to go use your money and go buy some pieces and make your outfit fall themed," which is absolutely appalling. She could have just sent me
Right.
home and I could have changed outfits, but instead, I was told to spend my own money to change this outfit. So I changed it the best I could with like a black shawl, some necklaces, and a belt. And I spent probably like $30 on these accessories. I start to have a panic attack because I had just been held hostage. I had just been drugged for 12 hours and I'm still trying to present myself. So I go like in the back and I'm trying to compose myself. And she comes up to me. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Can I just have a moment, please? Can I just have a moment?" Rather than asking me, "Hey, what happened?" or just being a courteous person, she's like, "No, you only have 1 minute." I said, "Can I please have 5 minutes just to compose myself? I just need a few minutes." And she's like, "No, 1 minute or you're fired." And basically just fired me. It was very insane. It was so tacky. It was so trashy. I've actually worked as a hiring manager. I was an operations manager for a company. I've been a recruiter and I have supervised many employees and I have never, could not even fathom acting that way. She did not know what happened. She had no way to know that I had been kidnapped and held hostage, but she saw a young woman in distress. And rather than showing kindness, she chose to fire me.
Right. The unsympathetic people that, as someone who's recovering, as someone who is healing from these traumas, the unfortunate reality is we still have to live our lives. You're not insulated bubble of healing where you can just get better. No, you still have to actively go and live and earn and engage with this public that in many times, in many cases, does not have even the most basic understanding of what you went through, of what occurred. And they're not even taking the time to ask, like, hey, so like that to me just kind of relates to a little bit of you knowing, hey, if I had 5 minutes and I could just do the techniques that I've been working on, I could do some deep breathing, I can do some visualization, I can do something to get out of this. I know I can make it through this, but this is what I need. I need 5 minutes. And then for someone to even just look at you and be like, no, that's not what you're allowed to do. You don't get 5 minutes, you get 1 minute, and those are the rules, and goodbye. And it's like, also, you buy stuff, and then now you're fired. You know what I mean? Like, it's just wild, the scenarios that you're gonna find yourself in when you are trying to recover, whenever you are trying to heal. So we've been talking about boundaries some, and you have been phenomenal at building them, developing them, executing them. What advice would you have for people from troubled backgrounds who might have had some traumatic experiences? What advice would you give someone who's working on developing boundaries so that they can become like you?
Thank you. That's a great question. I realize that having boundaries is a gift that you're giving yourself. And boundaries are there to protect us. And really, there's also that other layer. And I've discussed this before is that our bodies, our souls, our minds, our homes, all of these are so sacred. They really are. So when you have boundaries, you are showing yourself honor. You're giving yourself a gift that no one else is going to give you. No one else is going to have boundaries for you. You have to establish them for yourself. You can still be kind. You can still be loving. You can still be generous, but it's about protecting yourself. And once you realize that you deserve to have boundaries and that nothing compares to your emotional and mental peace of mind, nothing comes even close. That is your top priority. You should be your top priority. Then everything else really falls into place as long as you're doing it for your highest good.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's so true. You're fighting and you're creating that bubble that you need so that you can heal, so that you can continue to grow, not just heal. You know what I mean? I'm talking about surviving and thriving, but it all has to come from an area where you've developed that bubble, you've developed that boundary, that sacred place that you are, that identity that you're taking care of and nurturing and allowing to blossom. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I'd like to tie in a similar story from one of my friends.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear it.
So I grew up with someone, and this relates to the kidnapping. It relates to a lot of these things and violence against women and these masks and also the broken system. So I have a good friend. We grew up together. We did some of the same extracurricular activities. His big goal was to be a Marine. I was going into the Navy to do my thing. He went to boot camp, all this stuff. Anyway, so that's how we knew. We knew from like young age, high school, and we had these like shared aspirations, but we still keep in touch throughout life. We're both in San Diego at some point or in Southern California at some point during our lives, and he's suddenly ensnared in this relationship that is way different from what his grandmother really raised him, but his mom, you know what I mean? Like his mom, so different from what his mom envisioned. I think he already may have been married, or I don't know if he was married, but he had a relationship with someone, maybe even had a kid, right? But now all of a sudden he's like hooked into this other person, right? And then there's a mutual connection. There's a guy in the same career field, Navy SEAL type, who's also kind of in the picture. But what was going on was this person that he fell in love with was a victim of human trafficking, but in a different way, not in the way that, is shown in Taken, not in the way that you think of in like the normal reality of, oh, this person's kidnapped and they're supposed to do things against their will. No, it was kind of in their own home. So her ex-boyfriend was a criminal. So he is exerting control over her and saying, nope, you can't see that guy. Nope, we're back together. And this guy's like an IT guy, like a software guy, something like that. Like he's got a very officey job, but he would take her child for days and weeks on end and basically force her to perform an online medium. I don't know what it was, but like think OnlyFans or something along those lines. And nope, you need to do this. You need to do this. You're doing this. If you don't do this, you're never going to see your child again. And so she's basically extorted and trapped in this reality, and he's going to the authorities. He's going to the cops. Like, what can we do? How can we do this? Like, this is wrong. We need to save this person.
Horrifying.
This is horrific. And essentially what the sad state of affairs is what it kind of boiled down to was you're fighting a losing war. You're fighting a losing game. They have resources. They're getting all this money. And like, who knows if this is the only victim that this guy has? Is he working with other people? Is there a network? How many people are being extorted into an economic action and activity through means like this by holding their kid away from them? And then now they're generating money. So it's like, yeah, so you're going to have lawyers and proving all of this. And guess what? They've got more means. They've got more resources. You're a disabled vet with no job. Like, what are you going to do?
My gosh,
You know what I mean?
horrifying. That's so sad.
Absolutely horrifying. And it's like, hey, man, they're just going to hold this up in court and it's just going to be a drain. And there is no justice. There is no real logical way out. And that's just really the sad state of affairs in a lot of things. And it's troubling and it's not right. And that is what we are working to correct. I'll pass it back over to you to weigh in.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. That really does highlight the failures of our current society, especially in relation to the justice system. And I feel that the more we get these stories like my own, like this one out there, the more that we can recognize these feelings and hopefully there can become a change because our society right now truly, truly needs a radical change when it comes to these these vile shortcomings that are very even dangerous. They are absolutely dangerous. People's lives are at stakes. The justice system needs to take things of this nature so much more seriously. Absolutely. I hope that at the end of the day, there will be this radical change and that we don't have to live in a society anymore where women can get abused, extorted, as in the case that you mentioned, kidnapped multiple times, as in my case, and have no one in the justice system really seem to care.
Yes,
In fact, when I
absolutely.
looked at my police report from being kidnapped and held hostage for 12 hours, I was appalled. They had made me out to be some sort of addict. It felt like I had been completely discredited. Completely discredited. They said that I kept repeating myself. They said I had low self-esteem. It felt like it had been manipulated to make me appear that I was mentally unstable and that this situation had not occurred. However, lo and behold, it did occur. I am a certified life coach. I am in college to be a therapist. I told the whole entire truth. And in the book, it showcases really the whole layers and the depths of this. And again, as mentioned, the police report was absolutely appalling. I think you read that about that in the book, how I was misrepresented. And that is just one of many examples of the radical change that needs to happen.
Absolutely. And in my own experience, so like I know what you went through. It was not on a police report, but I had the exact same scenario go down whenever I was seeking care for my PTSD.
I am so sorry. That is awful.
And yeah, and so like that is what this so I had to go back through my notes to figure out why am I not getting care? Why is nobody treating me? Why are they discrediting me? Why are they believing some narrative? And it is because their documentation painted the narrative that they wanted me to have, not the narrative that was true that would actually get me to the care that I needed. So I know the betrayal, the hurt, the emotions that go into looking over some documentation or paperwork after the fact whenever you're just like, dude, something needs to change. We need help. The justice system needs help. And then you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't document this to help me. You did not document this to further justice or my cause or my medical thing. You documented this so that you could paint a narrative that you wanted to believe to absolve yourself of doing your job and acting in the benefit of the citizen, the person, the end user, the person who needs it.
Yeah.
And that is, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on so many times it seems like people are just trying to find that easy button to get out of jail
Absolutely.
free, to absolve themselves of doing the hard work.
It is so sad, and I'm so sorry that you had to face a similar situation. And I'm proud of you for starting this podcast and really using your gifts and using your voice to help others. I think it is so important, and I think it takes a lot of bravery to start a podcast and to share your voice and what you've experienced. So thank you again.
Yes, and I really appreciate that. And by no means I'm not trying to make like an uneven comparison. I know that what you went through, what you endured was on a whole different magnitude. I'm just trying to share some of those experiences and relate in the ways that I can.
I feel that it is important to share. So thank you. And I don't think it's a matter of what's more or a different magnitude. At the end of the day, we were both let down. And at the end of the day, we are both using our voice to help combat it and to shed light on these vital and appalling shortcomings.
Right. So as we kind of wrap up, I want to kind of hit on another theme that I recognized in your story and in your book. Faith has been kind of a consistent thread and theme there. You've had your triumphs with faith and you've also had your letdowns and your betrayals. So, would you mind kind of sharing your side of faith, what that means to you, and how it lives in your life?
Absolutely. In my book, I do highlight several instances where I had been horrifically mistreated by those in organized religion. Right now, I currently hold on to faith deeply, irregardless. I feel like it has been a thread throughout my life. However, now I have more of a non denominational spiritualistic approach. So I believe in a higher power. Sometimes I pray to Jesus still, but at this point in time, I probably will not be calling myself a Christian. But I will say that I do hold my faith in a higher power very seriously. I call on my angels, I call on my guides. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I think faith is something beautiful and it can be really individualized to whatever works for you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that a little bit and your ability to heal in spite of some of the hurt that you have encountered in some of those areas. Because I think that there's a lot of people who grapple with this, who grapple with, again, these systems that we were told to trust in, that we're told to believe in. And there's some people who have been let down by those systems, who've been hurt by those systems. But a lot of the time, it's not the central core that is hurting them, it is broken people.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you're able to have seen through that and be able to see, hey, you know what? Like, these are broken people. There's something else there. There is a higher power that I believe in. And that's really my guide. And we're going to heal through this. We're going to go through this. And you've still got a compass bearing that you can work towards. So I do want to thank you again so much for coming on the show, so much for your bravery. We truly are turning the tides of mental health, of the justice system, and the crippling effects that are being perpetuated across generations. Your voice and your story are instrumental part of this cultural revolution, and we will break the chains that are holding so many others in bondage to their past, to their addictions, and to their traumas. And if it were not for you, this wouldn't be possible. But you are that voice. You are changing that tide. You're turning the tides, and you're making a big impact. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure. Thank you again. I really appreciated this opportunity to share my story, and thank you for sharing some of yours as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. Just a final note before you go, thank you, and thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for. Sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey. No more wine.